everyone, today I'm with our psychologist Georgia MacNevin, and we are going to be role-playing a video on mindfulness and talking about the common pitfalls that many people come up against when trying to implement a mindfulness practice. So I'm Hayley, I'm the practice manager, and we are from STNA Psychology. Thanks,
Great.
Georgia.
Thanks, Hayley. Hi everyone. So today Hayley's going to be role-playing a client who is struggling to develop a mindfulness practice. And like Hayley said, we'll be addressing some of the common barriers and pitfalls that you might face when you start practicing mindfulness. And we wanted to set you guys up for success with your mindfulness practice by giving you this information. So Hayley.
So, Georgia, I have been feeling a lot of stress at work lately, and I'm finding that I'm really agitated and I can't concentrate. And somebody suggested that I try a mindfulness practice. So
did you have a go at practicing mindfulness?
Yeah, I did. I gave it a go, but I kind of found that I was feeling even more agitated and I just couldn't sit still, and I just really felt like it's just not for me.
So you noticed when you were trying to practice that you were feeling more agitated and struggling to sit down, and then you came to the conclusion that it wasn't for you. So what was it about your experience that made you feel like it wasn't for you?
I just felt like it was too hard. My mind kept racing and I kept getting more stressed that I couldn't sort of stop my thoughts and I couldn't do the mindfulness practice.
Yeah. So did you have an expectation that the mindfulness practice should do something for you, or what was your sort of expectations going into it?
I thought that it would calm me down and that it would help me feel less stressed.
Okay. So when you sat down and you had that expectation that you should feel calmer and less stressed, and then it wasn't having that effect at the time, you started to feel more anxious and stressed that the practice wasn't doing what you had expected it to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and this is a really common expectation that a lot of people have when they are practicing mindfulness for the first time. There's a lot of misconceptions that practicing mindfulness is going to help us feel relaxed at the time or help us clear our minds and empty ourselves of thoughts. And this just isn't the case. When we're practicing mindfulness, what we're hoping to do across time is develop a regular practice where we're practicing daily, and with that regular daily practice, we do notice that there's a cumulative effect. So it's like building up strength in your muscles. So after you go to the gym one time, you're not going to be stronger the next day. And in the same way, when we practice mindfulness, when we practice that one time, we're not going to feel better right away necessarily. Sometimes we may feel better when we practice mindfulness and have a calming of the nervous system and the clearing of the mind. But on other days, we actually may feel worse. We may feel more agitated. We may have given ourselves some time and space so our mind starts thinking more about the difficult things that we have going on in our lives. So it's not actually about how we feel after one sitting of mindfulness. With the practice, we're trying to attain the results that we get when we practice daily for a regular amount of time. 5 to 10 minutes a day is enough across, say, 2 months' time. And then we're going to start to notice some of the positive effects that a mindfulness practice can give us. What we know, the research says, is that if we do practice mindfulness for 5 to 10 minutes a day for 2 months, we're going to see clinically significant results in terms of reductions in depression, reductions in anxiety, reductions in stress. We're going to see improvements in relationships, improvements in cognitive functioning, including working memory, ability to focus, and a range of other significant benefits that you can gain. And I want to use the metaphor of mindfulness is not like a hammer and a nail. You're not like tapping that in and it's done and you've used that tool and it's fixed. These are processes, and we're training our mind to actually function in a new way. And it's with that, the research also shows that there's a cumulative effect across time where we get structural and functional brain changes. So we actually see the brain plasticity working, and the brain starts to function in a new way. So I'm not going to go into all of that research, but it's readily available if you'd like to Google it and have a look at some of those results. But today I wanted to talk about some of the pitfalls that you were talking about, Hayley, when you were trying to sit down and do this practice. So I think the first thing is, just recognizing that we're not necessarily going to feel better when we sit down to practice mindfulness. And when we let go of that expectation of the mindfulness practice having to do anything for us at the time, then we can actually practice mindfulness, which is just the act of noticing. Just noticing what's going on for us in our experience at that time, without judgment or expectation. Noticing what we can see, hear, feel, taste. We're noticing what we're thinking, we're noticing what we're feeling, and we're just being a witness to our experience at that time. So we're not trying to relax, we're not trying to empty the mind, we're just noticing. So some days you may notice that you get that beautiful relaxation happening during your mindfulness practice, and we'd just be aware of that, we'd just be noticing that. On other days you might notice that you're feeling impatient or agitated and it's really difficult to sit still, and we'd just be noticing that. There'd be days when we'd notice that it was really easy to sort of clear our mind and drop into a peaceful state. And there'll be other days where the mind's racing and we've got worry thoughts about, or rumination thoughts, or maybe we're just more distracted that day. And we're just noticing that. Noticing how we are and what our experience is in the present moment. That makes sense. So it's really important that we notice what expectations we have about a mindfulness practice that might be getting in the way of us just noticing what's going on for us when we sit down to do our practice. So in this way, it's just really important that we know that it's quite different from relaxation techniques. And while we will often feel relaxed when we practice mindfulness, it's not the aim of the practice. The aim of the practice is to build up this mindfulness muscle, to be able to sit with whatever's going on for us, be that a comfortable, easy, pleasant experience or something that's more challenging to sit with. And this helps us build up the muscle to be able to tolerate our stress, our anxiety, and different situations, different emotions that come up for us, different thoughts that we may experience without needing to react to those, to try and get rid of them or push them away. So we're really trying to accept our experience as it is.
That makes it sound a lot easier, I suppose, rather than putting so much pressure on myself to make it work. I feel like I was trying to maybe force it to happen, and that was what was causing me to get more stressed.
And it's interesting when you say you were trying to force it, because it's that resistance to our experience that can actually lead to more suffering and more difficult emotions. So let's say we're sitting down to practice mindfulness, and you happen to notice that there was some little bit of anxiety, tightness in the chest going on. And let's say your mind started to resist that. Then you might notice that you started to feel anxious about the fact that you were experiencing a little bit of anxiety, and your mind might start to tell you a story about why you shouldn't be, and that you're doing mindfulness wrong, and that you're not practicing properly, and that might lead you to feel more anxiety. So we get this secondary wave of anxiety hitting. And then you might interpret that in a new way of, oh my God, I'm definitely not doing it right. There's no point in me even trying to practice this. And so we've got ourselves into a vicious cycle there where we're in the act of resisting what was going on for you. We've created secondary emotions. And then you might start to feel frustrated and angry about the fact that this practice doesn't work for you. And then you might start to feel sad and hopeless that things that work for other people aren't working for you. So in that way we can start to create all of these secondary issues, whereas if we had have just sat with the mindfulness practice of just noticing and allowing and opening up to that anxiety and tightness that you had in the chest, then we could have sat with that primary experience of there being a little bit of anxiety around and that being okay. And something that you could sit with and tolerate and be okay with. Does that make sense, the difference there?
It does. So if I kind of just let go and stop trying to force things, then eventually over time it's going to gradually become easier and I'm going to start to get the hang of it. But it's just a practice and something that I keep doing rather than something that I just need to try and achieve straight away.
Yeah, definitely. And letting go of those expectations of what the practice is supposed to be.
Yeah.
The only thing that we're trying to control when we're practicing mindfulness is where our attention goes. So this might be putting our attention onto our toes or onto what we could hear. And sometimes we might even put our attention onto what we're thinking. So we might start to notice different thoughts that we're having and just being aware of how busy our mind is that day. So it's just noticing and moving our attention around to different parts of our experience. One thing I wanted to talk to you about as well when we're developing that mindfulness practice is it's really important that we do practice consistently every day to get those cumulative effects across time. If we've got a spotty practice and we're practicing, once or twice a week, or just when, we're feeling like we are calm enough to practice, we're not actually going to get the results that we want to see. So when you are establishing a mindfulness practice, it's good to try and get into a bit of a routine to develop that habit, and regardless of how you're feeling that day, sitting down and doing your 5 to 10 minutes of mindfulness practice, and you'll start to see the results after that cumulative effect across about 8 weeks of practice.
Okay, so 5 to 10 minutes every day. I think I can do that.
Alrighty. Well, I guess we can check back in and see how it goes.
Sounds good.
Alright, thank you.
Thanks, Georgia.